Hi, this is Tracy. Today I've got a very special guest with me to talk to you about all the things that you need to know before you divorce a narcissist. So if you're going through a divorce now or you're planning on going through a divorce, we have the person that can answer some of your questions here today. Her name is Rosemary Lombardy. She's a financial expert with a very powerful website that can help you get the tools that you need to prepare for the battle of your life. I want you to think of it that way, which sounds really ominous and it sounds really terrible. But when you're fighting against a person without any empathy, you think you're divorcing the person that you were married to. But this has become the war zone and you are the enemy. That's hard to accept, but it is going to be the fact. And if you are not geared up and prepared for war, you will lose. So today I've got a very special guest. Let's welcome Rosemary. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your inviting me to talk to your audience. I appreciate the opportunity. And first of all, let me express my condolences to your listeners for their divorce. It is even more difficult when your spouse is an abuser, a lot more difficult. So I hope that I will be able to give you information that is useful and practical that you can use. You will be able to find a lot more in-depth resources on my website because I'm going to be covering a lot of material today. It's true that the best defense is a good offense. I don't mean confronting your abuser or engaging in additional conflict. What I mean is being proactive, taking appropriate action to empower yourself to leave your abuser, informing yourself, taking precautions to protect yourself and your children, as well as your assets. And there are a lot of things that you can do. Remember that this is a temporary situation, and you can do this. You have no choice anyway if you're going to be happy. Men sometimes have abusive spouses too, although I will be directing this podcast mainly to women since they are the predominant victims of domestic abuse. I will be addressing your specific needs if you're the breadwinner when I talk about child support and alimony a little bit later on in this podcast. Your abuser is going to ramp it up as soon as he finds out that he's losing control over you. I've heard this referred to frequently as divorce psychosis. It's a life or death experience for him. He literally believes that you are the enemy in an irrational winner-take-all experience. It does not matter that you loved and supported him for years, that you're the mother of his children, that you made a lot of sacrifices. He's only concerned about himself and is going to try to destroy you. I'm not saying this to scare you, but you're dealing with someone who's very irrational. And the sooner that you accept that, the better off that you're going to be so that you can take the appropriate precautions. Now is not the time to cave in to his unreasonable demands just to be a peacemaker, as the outcome of the divorce is going to affect you and your children permanently. So you must become their advocate, and as importantly, you must become your own advocate if you're going to succeed. I have an 11-step prep guide that's free on my website. You can sign up for additional resources there. There's a recommended reading section that you can look at, and I have a book that's in the works and should be coming out soon. So after filing for divorce, one of the first things you should do if you haven't done it already is get a credit card in your name alone and call up the credit card companies where you have joint accounts and close out any joint accounts that have zero balance. Freeze any joint accounts that still have a balance. You will not be able to close them out, but you can at least prevent any additional debt being added to the cards, because you will be responsible for that just as your husband if you sign for the card, even if those debts are allocated to him in the divorce. The credit card companies do not care about what was assigned to whom in a divorce decree. The only thing they care about is that you signed for the card, therefore you're legally responsible. So you cannot expect him to honor the divorce decree after the divorce is final. Mm-hmm. He may not pay that debt off, and document all of those phone calls that you make to the credit card companies, and request that they notify the credit agencies that those accounts have been closed. Late payments and skip payments are going to affect your credit. They will affect your ability to refinance the home if you're planning on keeping it. They will affect your ability to buy a new home, and also the rate of interest that you will be charged on the home. Mm-hmm. I had a client whose husband was assigned a particular credit card debt in the divorce, but unfortunately the card was in her name. He made excuses, kept failing to pay the debt. I advised her, go ahead and pay off that credit card and take him to small claims court. Unfortunately, she did not do that, and now it's affected her credit score. So, and that takes years to clear up. So please be aware of that. Do everything that you possibly can to protect your credit score. Once you file for divorce, get all of the information that your attorney has requested from you, hospital records, pictures that document the abuse, bank and brokerage statements, pay stubs, recent tax returns, estate documents, emails and posts that document his abuse or infidelity. Keep them in a safe place outside the home where they cannot be destroyed. Make sure you have a copy of everything that you give to your attorney in case things get lost or misplaced. I put things in file folders in chronological order so that they would be very easy for my attorney to find when he needed them. Make sure that you have all the information together when you go see your attorney, or make another appointment and get it together as soon as possible. Limit your discussions with your attorney to the task at hand, because he's going to bill you for his time, and attorney's fees are quite expensive. Yes. So be sure and keep that in mind. The other thing is that you frequently can talk to his assistant. You're going to be billed for her time as well, but it's not quite as expensive as the attorneys. If you are afraid for your safety, take your children and leave the home immediately and go to a safe place. If you don't have any place to go, check the emergency section on my website, go to a domestic shelter, and then call your attorney to get a restraining order. That's the most important thing you can do. Another piece of advice, get your own financial advisor. Don't use the same one as your husband to save money. You need to get advice that's in your best interest. Have that financial advisor prepare a financial plan for you, and do a budget with that person of what you can expect your expenses to realistically be after the divorce. Your attorney is going to need a copy of that budget as well to determine how much alimony and child support to ask for. If you want to keep the house, be sure to discuss that with your financial advisor to make sure that you can, in fact, afford to keep the house. Because if you can't, you're going to have real financial problems afterwards if you keep the house. So he or she will be able to explain all of the investments to you and make a recommendation as far as what to keep and what not to keep. Your attorney will have some ideas in that regard as well. Keep in mind that your attorney is an expert in the law, not in investments. So every situation is unique. So take in all of the recommendations that you receive and then decide for yourself what is the most appropriate thing for you. I have a lot of articles on the website, how to work with the attorney, what to bring, what to expect when going to court, understand the legal process, working with your financial advisor, budgeting and alimony that I think you'll find quite useful. As far as the men are concerned, if you are the breadwinner, you can petition the court for a modification in child support and alimony if the financial situation changes for either one of you. For example, a job loss or a permanent reduction in income. In some states, you can also petition the court for a modification of alimony and child support if your ex-spouse cohabits with another person. Alimony stops in the case of a remarriage. Alimony is tax deductible to you and taxable income to your spouse. Child support is not.
So during my divorce, my husband actually quit his job in order to not pay me any support. That's a very common thing. Do you have any advice on that?
That is something you would need to discuss with your attorney. Yeah, that's really underhanded. I do know that there is a minimum amount that he is required to pay, whether he's working or not, which is based on a 40-hour week and minimum wage. But the other thing is to keep tabs on him, and so that when he does get a job, that you can go back to the court and request that the alimony and child support be modified to be increased based on his new wages.
Okay.
But it's not surprising that this kind of thing happens. So I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear it happen to you. If you are a homemaker, keep in mind that alimony does not last forever. So start thinking now about what you're going to do to support yourself after it ends. Take an aptitude test, get an education, learn a trade, do what you have to do. It's going to really dramatically increase your self-esteem when you become self-supportive and you can take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Be realistic about what you can expect in the divorce. In most states, you will get half the assets. And you don't want to rack up unnecessary court costs and attorney's fees. Half the assets does not include, in most states, inherited assets, gifts, or assets that were owned prior to the marriage that were kept in separate name. So be sure and talk with your attorney about that to get advice, because each state is different. If you signed a prenup, your rights to assets may be much more limited. So be sure and give a copy of that to your attorney. After a divorce petition has been filed, neither one of you can cancel a health or life insurance policy or change the beneficiary. So if your husband is the owner of that insurance, he may very well try to cancel it just to spite you. That happened to me. Be sure to write him a letter, or have your attorney write him a letter or an email telling him that he is not allowed to cancel that policy. My ex didn't cancel the policy when I notified him he wasn't allowed to, but he stopped paying the premiums. I had to pay the premiums to keep that policy in force. So do what you have to do to protect the assets. He also tried to start a new business, which is illegal in my state. And it was risky. It was a lot of money, a lot of leverage. And he made a down payment on a large piece of equipment. So I had to get a restraining order. We lost the down payment, but at least he didn't bankrupt me. So pay attention and do what you have to do to protect yourself. And if that means getting a restraining order, then do it, and do it as soon as possible instead of letting things go. After the divorce is final, I think we're on to question number 2 now. So.
Okay. How does she protect her family after the divorce?
Okay, financially, well, the first thing to keep in mind is that your divorce is your responsibility. It is your responsibility after the divorce to make sure that assets that you are awarded are retitled in your name. Don't expect the attorney to do it. You need to make sure that bank accounts and investment accounts are retitled, beneficiaries are changed, enlist your financial advisor to give you help in that regard. Your attorney may be willing to do a quitclaim deed for you to retitle real estate. If not, he can probably refer a good real estate attorney to you to do so. But you need to make sure that all of the assets are changed over and beneficiary designations are changed as well. That's extremely important, especially on life insurance policies, retirement accounts, annuities, and so on. Deferred compensation plans, stock option plans, if you have those. A lot of those have beneficiary designations. You do not want to leave your ex-spouse as beneficiary. I do know in some states that even if he is a beneficiary, once the divorce is final, those beneficiary designations are no longer valid, but that's not true in every state. So make sure that that is taken care of as soon as possible after the divorce is final. Make sure that you do not have your name on any of your husband's debts after the divorce is final.
And they should be checking their credit report before and after, right?
You should be checking your credit report during the marriage, during the divorce, and afterwards. And you can have a credit monitoring service if you want to pay for that. Monitor your credit. The most important thing to do is get a copy of your credit report, read it carefully, close out any old accounts that have a zero balance. Because what can happen is charges can be made on those old accounts and statements sent somewhere else, and you would never even know. And in the meantime, it's ruining your credit. So you definitely need to keep on top of that. Organize your records and make sure that these things get done. You can order a free credit report from each of the 3 major credit agencies and rotate them every 4 months. Have a lockbox at your bank in your name, and think about who you would like to add to that box, just in case something happens to you. Keep your deeds, titles, insurance policies, estate documents, and so on in the box, and have someone else have access as well.
On that note, we had a joint box, and the court ordered me to not ever close it during the divorce because they were like, she's going to hide things there. She's got this box. And so I had already gone to the safe deposit box, and prior to them being subpoenaed to come and look at it, and I had taken everything out and put it somewhere else that was safe. And I put a picture in it of him giving the finger. So when they got in there, that was all that was there. So that was a little bit of personal haha on them, but it is really important, especially if it's joint, that they have access. So, and that could be locked as well. That could be locked by the courts to not empty that. So again, getting your own, it negates that, because now they don't have rights to that. You might not be able to close the joint one during the divorce, as mine was.
Correct.
You can get it to another one and protect your stuff.
Well, the best thing to do before you actually file for a divorce is to go to the box, if that's possible, and take out anything that belongs to you. Anything that's important, make copies of, and get a box of your own. Definitely.
Yeah, good advice.
I agree. The other thing is a lot of married couples do have safes in their home. You can change the combination or change the key if you need to. I really advise, in the case of dealing with an abuser or narcissist, that important documents not be in the home at all. You find someplace safe at work or somewhere else. Maybe give them to your attorney for safekeeping, but someplace else that's safe, because evidence will be destroyed. Statements will be destroyed. Anything that he can get his hands on. I had no idea that my ex was such a snoop. I'd been married to him for over 25 years, and I didn't have any privacy at all and didn't know it. He was very sneaky. So
Wow.
please be aware that that could happen, and you don't want to lose important documentation that's relevant to your case. After the divorce, take all of the relevant documents. You need to keep out a certified copy of the divorce decree because you may need it, but anything else related to the divorce, including tax returns, put them in plastic containers. You can stick them in your attic or in your basement, but get them out of sight. You don't want to look at that stuff anymore. Keep them for 7 years, just in case you could still have a tax audit. So you want to make sure that you keep those documents for 7 years, just to be on the safe side. After that, a lot of that stuff can be shredded and forgotten. But in case he takes you back to court as well, you may need it. So hang on to it for a while.
Yeah, I know I had like 5,000 sheets of paper that, here's all the statements, I had everything that the court asked for, and he never produced anything. He was in contempt of court 6 times. So those papers, which got scanned and put onto, the lawyer system for them to have access to, were so valuable because it was the only copy of it. So if you're trying to prove something, you need that as evidence, and it might come out later, especially with child support issues or things like that. So it's such an important thing to keep all of that stuff. But like you said, put it somewhere that you're not like constantly being reminded of it.
Right.
Yeah. So are we on question 3?
Yes, we are.
What tricks and maneuvers should they be looking out for from their abuser, and how does she protect herself?
Well, if your husband's an abuser and a narcissist, he's probably very devious and unethical as well. So expect him to lie. Expect him to hide assets. He may try to cut off cash and empty bank accounts to punish you. So don't be surprised if that happens. If at all possible, before you file for divorce, open an account in your name alone and keep some cash in there, because you're going to need cash to pay a retainer to the attorney and also for living expenses during the divorce. You may be able to get a court order requiring your husband to pay your living expenses, but enforcing that order may take time. Please be aware of that. If he violates a court order to give you support, he can be held in contempt of court and do jail time until he does comply. Yeah.
On that note, my ex did so many tricks, and it was horrific what they can put you through, because they know every trick in the book, and they generally get like the most shark-like lawyers. I think they must look up and Google like most horrific lawyer that is out there, because they're going to pull every single trick. So you just have to be so aware of what they could do, because this person that you knew is not the person you're divorcing. The mask is fallen, and they're going to pull every single trick.
That's true, but now is not the time for fear. Don't be afraid. Don't cave in. Do what you have to do to protect yourself. Remember, knowledge is power. And a divorce is a conflict. I don't know of any divorces, even where abuse is not involved, that were friendly. They were all adversarial. Keep that in mind. Don't take it personally. You have got to fight for yourself, and you can do this. He's going to hide assets if he hasn't done so already. There are several different things that he can do to hide assets. I'm going to give you just some of them that I can think of.
Oh, good.
I'm sure I left something out, but hiding assets would include things such as temporarily transferring ownership to another party of real estate. I have seen that one. If he has a business, being paid in cash. and hiding the cash, deferring income, failing to bill customers until after the divorce is final, overstating accounts payable if he has a business, overstating accounts receivable and bad debts if he has a business, taking personal property and moving it to an undisclosed location, failure to disclose accounts, overpaying bills and taxes in the expectation of getting a big fund after the divorce is final.
Wow.
Yes. Paying, and this is my favorite one because I know this happened. Paying with a debit card and getting large amounts of cash back at the grocery store.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, if you get $100 or $200 back every time you use a credit card for 2 years, that can really add up. So
Absolutely.
pay attention, look for receipts that may be lying around the house or maybe in his pants pockets.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can be used as evidence, keep them. There may be a pattern there. You may need to hire a forensic accountant if there are large sums of money involved that you think are missing. Discuss that with your attorney to see if the expense is warranted. And you may not be able to prove or stop the hiding of assets. It does happen.
Yeah. On that note, before we go to the next one, because I know you got a card there, so I don't mind interrupting you here.
Not at all.
But during my divorce, my ex-husband's family put a $5 million house in his name during the divorce and then lied about it in court, created 16 pages of documentation that it wasn't in his name, but we found the records that it was. And by the time we found the records, which was just the next court date, they had moved it into a trust, so it wasn't in his name. So talk about hiding it. It was denial in court, like with documentation from a lawyer that was falsified. And then they moved it to a trust. And the judge said, well, what about last month? Didn't you remember that you put a $5 million house in his name? And they just sat there stone-faced going, nope, we didn't remember. There's nothing you could do at that point. So they will hide assets. And that was a horrific example of taking advantage, but don't expect them to play fair.
No, they don't play fair.
Just protect yourself. Understand what's going on and don't be blind to it.
Yes, there will be damage. And I'm not going to say that there won't be because there will be some damage. Your job is to minimize the damage. Mm-hmm. Minimize the damage and get out.
Right, exactly.
And it's worth every penny. Mm-hmm. Just keep in mind that, yes, you're going to have some losses. Cut your losses. It's time to cut losses. Mm-hmm. One of my clients found out that her husband had not filed tax returns for years. He had told her, well, we filed them online, and she was gullible. And she did not find out until the IRS seized her bank account.
Wow. Which
had funds that were earmarked for her children's educations. She is just as responsible as he is for failure to file penalties and interest charges that now exceed the amount of the original tax owed. So be responsible, make sure that you have copies of tax returns, get involved in your finances because it does affect you. Mm-hmm. My ex-husband also had his attorney make unreasonable demands requesting 10 years past tax returns. Among other things, when he failed to answer a lot of questions on his court documents. His own set of interrogatories had lots of blanks on it, and requests for documents. There were many statements that I really needed to see and never got. So the main thing to remember in the divorce is that you have an objective, and you need to focus on that. Custody of the children, child support, alimony to get an education, half the assets. Focus on that. Your husband is going to try to derail you, arguing about furnishings, for example. Focus on the big picture and don't let him wear you down because he's counting on that. So don't negotiate with him directly. Tell him to have his attorney talk to your attorney and refuse to discuss it any further. He's going to be unreasonable. He's going to try to scare you. I'm going to get custody of the kids, even if he doesn't want it. Limit conversations with him. Remember, he's toxic.
And they could be recording, just saying. Be careful when you talk with them, limit that. But when you do, if you can, it may not be admissible in court, but it may be. In Colorado, it is. So just keep track of this information and protect yourself that way.
Right. Also, emails are e-trails. So if you are emailing back and forth to your husband, remember anything that you write can be used in court. So no bad language. Keep emails brief. Keep them related to just the children. Ignore the rest because they can be used in court either for you or against you. I sincerely hope at this point that you do not care what your husband thinks. It's a distraction. It doesn't matter. Keep in mind, you are at war. He is your opponent in his mind, and it should be in yours. Don't let your compassionate heart give in to his connivances. Abusive men tend to escalate their bad behavior and manipulation and dirty tricks because it has worked so well for them in the past. A lot of times women will cave in just to be over and done with the whole ugly mess. Remember that you have to live with these results for the rest of your life. So in general, men make more money. This is not true for everyone, but in general, after the divorce, men make more money than women do, and they do better financially after the divorce. So do not let him have more than he's entitled to be nice or to just get it over with, because this is going to affect you and your family permanently. He's not going to appreciate it. He's not going to respect you anymore. He doesn't respect you now. Let go of that. Fight for what you deserve. Figure out what that is, and then be reasonable about what you expect, and then fight like hell to get it. Your divorce is a conflict, and fight the good fight.
Yeah, it's really, really important. You were talking about the credit monitoring. Is it possible for someone to, before they file for the divorce, you're married, sign up for credit monitoring on them? Is that something, like a married couple could sign up for one account to monitor it? Can people do that?
You can sign up to monitor all of the accounts. Okay.
Because that would be helpful. Mine opened up new accounts and all this stuff and denied it in court. But then he didn't know, he wasn't living at the house at the time. He didn't know that he signed up for credit cards, but had the statements come to my house.
Oh my goodness.
And so we could produce those in court. And he sat there going, I don't have a Citibank card. And you're like, really? Look, they just thanked you for buying a watch. So, just be aware. And again, the credit stuff that they can do to you will damage your credits. They don't care about your future in being able to secure loans and money. In fact, the idea that they could squash that is like it's a high for them. They think, okay, we've accomplished something by ruining her credit. So if you monitor it and you watch it and you protect yourself, then you're not going to have that happen to you because you're aware of it. It's when we assume that because we were married for 20 years that they're not going to do something that low and dirty. Expect low and dirty. This is a war, like you said.
Yeah, and it's irrational behavior, but it is irrational behavior, and that's what you have to expect.
I know there was one other thing that was like really kind of a coup. I loved that we did this, and it was so stupid, but again, he wasn't living at the house, and yet he was claiming he had no money. He'd quit his job. He had no money to pay me any support and help with my rent at the time. And so we had a DSW card. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a shoe store, and you give them your royalty card every time you go in. And when you buy a certain amount, they give you like all of a sudden a gift certificate comes in the mail, $10 free in shoes, $10 free in shoes. And what was happening for me was he was in New York buying all of these shoes. And I'm talking like crazy amounts of shoes to the tune of $2,500 in a month. I was getting $50 gift certificates in the mail. So I'm getting 10 and I'm like, whoa, I guess he's buying shoes. 10. Oh, wow. 50, $100 in gift certificates because he bought $2,000 in shoes. So I was able to get into our DSW account and print off all of the shoes that he bought. There's a picture of the freaking shoes right there. And bring it to court next time and say, excuse me, but he said he doesn't have any money, but he just spent $2,500 on shoes this month. Because I was getting those gift certificates and he was using the card that was ours, I was able to access that information. And it did help the judge see that he was bullshitting and he actually was spending a lot of money out there. So that's...
This is the reason why it's so important that if it's a joint card, you freeze it.
Yeah.
As soon as you file for divorce, you freeze that joint debt so he cannot run up additional joint debt, and then he's got to open a card in his own name.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be responsible for that debt.
Yeah.
It's in his own name.
Exactly. And again, they'll try to put it on any joint cards because that's marital assets, that the marital debt is something that could be split by the court. So
Correct.
If he puts 20 grand on there, then you are responsible for half of that. But if you freeze it, you're protecting yourself. So
keep in mind that if it is a joint card and you sign for the card, according to the credit card company, you are responsible for 100% of it if he doesn't pay.
Wow. Okay.
If you sign for the card, you are responsible for that debt, period.
Wow.
And if you don't pay it, it's going to affect your credit score.
Absolutely.
And your ability to borrow money in the future. So this is extremely important.
Really important. Yeah. And the hiding of the assets, the hiding of everything is so common. I talk to survivors all the time that, they everything was hidden. Things were, rung up $100,000 in debt after they were not supposed to. There's a difference when the lawyer says you're not supposed to do anything on these cards and actually, suspending it and closing their ability to continue to do it. Because I was told, he's not allowed to do that, but he did it anyway.
Yes, you have to take control. You have to take action yourself.
Right. And protect yourself.
Protect yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we have number 4. How do they prepare and strengthen themselves mentally and emotionally to help them deal with this?
To help them cope. And this is the last question. So I hope you listen to this section because I think it's probably one of the most important things that you can do is to prepare yourself for battle. If you haven't been seeing a therapist already, please go see one. Abused women suffer from acute anxiety, eating disorders, depression, and PTSD. You need to work on self-esteem issues if you've been married to an abuser because all he's done your whole marriage is try to tear you down. Your therapist will also be your best sounding board during this difficult period. Other than your therapist, confide only in people who are supportive, non-judgmental, and discreet. You will feel better about your ability to handle and cope with the divorce if you take responsibility about the outcome. If you read a lot, get a lot of information, inform yourself as much as possible, and if you take proactive steps to protect yourself and your finances. So taking action will actually make you feel better. You will be better able to handle the divorce if your mind is clear and you are well rested. So get plenty of sleep, eat the right foods, and stay hydrated. These are simple things, but they are so important. You have to be at your best to be able to make the right decisions. Try to go for a long walk in nature every day. One of the things that I did when I suffered from anxiety during the divorce is a very simple thing that you can do throughout the day. Instead of reacting, stop, take in a deep breath into your abdomen, breathe through your nose into your abdomen slowly to the count of 4, stop for 2, then breathe out slowly through your mouth to the count of 4. Do this 5 to 10 times and do it as often during the day as needed. This will help you to stop, think, and respond as opposed to just reacting. It will really calm you down and reduce the stress. He is going to be yanking your chain, so you need to be able to stay grounded. This is why I think it's so important to go out in nature every day. Exercise also will help you reduce stress. It releases chemicals in your brain to increase your sense of well-being. So try to exercise at least 3 to 4 times a week for half an hour. This will help you to be alert. It will improve your memory, and it will give you the stamina that you need to cope with the divorce. It's also an act of self-care. You deserve self-care, so do it. Massage therapy will help you relax and reduce your blood pressure. It's very healing to be touched by someone who is safe. Music therapy. Music also has very healing properties if you listen to the right kind of music. Empowering music that uplifts women.
No country music. No country music makes you sad.
I don't know.
Well, there is empowering. I was listening to sad music at the time. It wasn't good.
Kelly Clarkson has got some really good
empowering, yeah.
That are empowering. Some oldies but goodies. Diana Ross, Helen Reddy, Whitney Houston. There's a lot of music out there. A lot of songs that were made famous by these wonderful women that empower them. If you hear degrading music or lyrics that objectify women, turn it off, change the channel. What you listen to affects your perception of the world. Mm-hmm. What you listen to affects your perception of the world. So keep that in mind. Bubble baths, I found those to be extremely helpful when I was going through my divorce. They really helped me to de-stress. So prayer, meditation, positive affirmations, being with friends and family who love you. Gratitude also is very helpful. Be grateful. I was grateful that I had a family. We were all healthy. I had a roof over my head. I could pay my bills. This is very important. In summary, take charge of your divorce. Get informed. Knowledge is power. Be proactive in protecting yourself and your children and your assets. Minimize the damage. There's a season for everything under heaven. A time to break down, a time to build up, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away. You're not alone. You will get through this. Better life awaits you around the corner. I wish you all the strength you need and the happiness in the world. You deserve it.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I want to give everybody your website again. We're going to have it along the bottom here, but breakingbonds.com. And Rosemary coaches women that are going through divorce with abusive people. She knows the tricks. She can help you, guide you financially, how to protect yourself. And I strongly recommend that if you're not equipped to do that, that you get some help. So often I hear of stories of the abuser being the controller of the money. The whole marriage, they were in charge. They might have kept you hostage to getting things that you needed. And so if that is you, if you are the person that was sort of removed from the financial picture, you don't know what your assets are, you don't know what's going on and where everything lays, you need someone like her. You need someone to be able to objectively look at it, because you're going to be a mess. You're going to be faced with a divorce that is a battle, and no one is ever prepared for that. So by getting the right help and putting this in place, you're going to assure yourself that you are smart about everything. And if you're just thinking about leaving your narcissist, on my website, narcissistabusesupport.com, we have a leaving plan. It's 28 pages of things, including a financial checklist of things that you should check, but also protecting your children and who to trust, things like that. So if you're ready to move on, definitely contact Rosemary or me. Okay. So I think that's all we've got. Thank you so much for all of this information. We'll have it on YouTube as well as iTunes for those that listen to it as a podcast. And we thank you so very much.
Thank you. My pleasure. And best of luck to you all.
Thank you.